Good afternoon. I would like to call to order the April 7th, 2025 Lake Washington School Board Study Session. Let the record reflect that we have 4 board members present and 1 on his way. And we have 3 of our 4 student representatives here with us today. We have 2 topics on the agenda. I don't know who's Lindsay, are you posting are you able to, or are you signed out now? Oh, okay. John, can you put up the board monitoring draft from Board Docs?
Is that what you need?
Yeah. Okay, so the first topic of discussion is going to be a continuation of board monitoring for next year that we started at our extended study session in March. Maybe. You got it. Thank you. So this is posted on Board Docs. I know the writing's really small.
Oh, no.
Just minimize that next time after you.
Everybody stare awkwardly at Lindsay.
So based off of the discussion that we had at the study session, Director Guthrie and I met with Dr. Holman and made some revisions for the proposed monitoring. So just a quick recap, the goal with changing the monitoring schedule and what it looks like for next year is to make room in our board meetings to spend more time on results monitoring versus operational expectation monitoring. Based off of the discussion that we had, we're proposing, I guess that's the right word, we're proposing that we do some operational expectation monitoring but not approval during study sessions, and then having the actual approval of the monitoring report happen at the board meeting that immediately follows. Hopefully freeing up the time that we then need to do progress report monitoring for results. So this is kind of a proposal of what it would look like. It might be easier to open it on your computers after I put Lindsay through all of that. I apologize profusely. It's so small. But yeah, so for example, the proposal would be to have OE 12 and OE 13. If you look on at the first October 6th meeting during the study session, where we would have essentially what we would normally have during a board meeting, a program update, discussion, questions, and then from there at the board meeting that same night, we would do the approval. If there were, concerns or questions or follow-up needed, we could then shift the approval to the following board meeting once we got those answers. But this just kind of takes care of the wanting to continue having focus on operational expectations, but then also freeing up space during board meeting time for the results progress monitoring. Thoughts? Questions? Comments? It's going to be a really short discussion. I know the one person that's going to have questions is just getting started. Yeah, James.
I feel like sometimes during our study sessions, we already go over time. So do you think there's going to be time in the study sessions to do what was will we have time?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we'll have to be really cognizant of kind of what we are trying to accomplish and making sure that we're just not overbooking our study sessions. But in general, even if you looked at our last year, around this time frame, we had a facilities program update during our study session for that meeting. And so we already do some of this alignment. It would just be a little bit more formal because we would be looking at the actual monitoring report during the study session and having that discussion. And then you'll see there is still a fair number of open study session slots for other topics that are of interest or that we would want to focus on or bring forward. Anyone else? Questions, comments?
And just to clarify too, OE 14, was that the only one that we talked about sort of still being normal?
OE 14, OE 10 for next year,
That's
and
right.
OE 9 are still, as well as technically OE 3 and OE 11, but that's because they tie in with our results so much, are still in the board meeting cadence. I don't know if it's a bad sign or a good sign. Yeah. Eric?
Sorry, I'm late. I thought when we were discussing this at the extended study session, I thought that the draft I'd seen at the time had some of these on consent, and so this is a shift. I'm sorry, I know I missed. I'm sure this was explained in the 2 minutes I wasn't here. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is the proposal as a result of that discussion.
We've made those adjustments now.
Yeah.
Thank you. Great. I mean, this. Can I keep talking?
Yes.
Okay. This is great. The one component that I still am troubled by is or not troubled by. Still questions about is what we're going to do with these progress report monitoring. In general, like I'm this framework makes sense to me, and setting aside more time intentionally to monitor results. I'm also in favor of where you may lose me is depending on how we're defining progress report monitoring. So how are we defining? Are we going to define that today, or is that something we're going to continue doing work on to think about what that looks like? And if that's the case, then I think I don't need to have this conversation any longer today. We can continue working to define that. But if we are defining it, like if there is a definition that everyone else has in their head today, I'd like to know what that is before we go forward.
So I think the next step after today, if this is generally acceptable for the board, is to develop a draft work plan that we bring to the next study session where we are diving into the work plan. And part of that would be that conversation. But I think a good example of what would some of the progress monitoring be related to R2. We were meeting with Principal Dan Irvine from Inglewood Middle School, and we were talking about algebra. And he started sharing some of the data related to student grades in algebra over the last 4 years. And as they've increased access to algebra, they've actually seen a higher rate of success in algebra. And you would think it would be the exact opposite. And so embedded in that are more students are accessing. There's a development of readiness for students as they're transitioning through Inglewood, but there's also teaching practices that have modified. But at the end of the day, the board's interest is really around how successful are students being in 8th grade, and if we have this target of students being successful in algebra by 8th grade, are we actually working towards that? And are there any data in the system that can help demonstrate that we're actually making that progress? So it isn't about getting into the instructional strategies or the curriculum around algebra, but if the board has said this is a result that we're interested in, what are some of the data that can help tell us, are we actually making progress towards that, or is there a stall in the system and we need to be mindful of that? Now, it's not the board's job then to say there's a stall and go do this. It's there's a stall, we expect outcomes such as we've defined in the results. Superintendent, please go figure that out. So it's not about redefining the program of algebra, but it's about unpacking some of the data that right now we don't unpack with the board.
Okay. I hear you. Are we going to is the board going to be pre-identifying which indicators are, like, let's call them like higher level indicators or extraordinary indicators or
Yes,
something?
because if we're going to bring data that is different than the kind of the, I'll just say the macro level data that's collected and aggregated in the student information system, you know, that we're able to get a little bit, we have easier access to. If we want a different level of data, then myself and my team need that significantly ahead of time so that we can actually do the work and bring data to the board.
Okay, so,
Because another question you might also ask is, currently there's students that aren't taking algebra in 8th grade. What is their success rate in 8th grade math right now? And if algebra by 8th grade is our target, what about students that are taking algebra in 9th grade? And is there anything we can learn from success rate? So there's so many questions that we could ask just about algebra that have data associated with it. And I think that data then helps inform the board when at the end of the day, you're actually monitoring the results policy,
yeah.
which is student success in algebra by 8th grade. But there's more than just a single number that defines that. It's this whole body of work, which is also the data that leads to that.
Okay. I buy most of that. So I think if the board, may I have just one more minute? Thank you. If we're going to be doing that, I think the board needs to look at revising R2 and R3 to call and have agreement with the superintendent where we are agreeing going into this what those indicators are that are going, the focus indicators, maybe that's the term. Going into this, these are the focus indicators for this year, and that there's agreement and definition around that, and that these are the indicators that will be monitored as part of this progress report or enhanced monitoring. Because if we're not doing that, then I worry that these additional monitorings will not be well focused and won't actually provide feedback in, and if there's not board agreement going in, then okay. No one's shaking their head no, at least. Okay. But I guess, sorry, last thing. To do that, we need to build that work into the work plan. That's a concern. I look at this, like October is both far away and not far away at all. And to set aside that, like, that's no small feat to, like, for the board and with the superintendent to go through R2, R3 and identify really what are those enhanced indicators. I think that's a significant lift.
And maybe for the 25-26 monitoring year, my team and I could maybe bring some proposals for the board that are based on what the board is interested in, but also areas where we feel more confident that we could have a depth of data to be able to have that discussion and work with the board. Does that make sense? So there's some indicators that if you said, here's a priority indicator, it might take us some time to really figure out how do we bring additional or different data to the board.
And to clarify, that was the goal of having 2 more annual work plan meetings. One was to land on kind of what the progress reports would be for the next year and come to a consensus as a board, because then we adopt in the next board meeting the work plan. So that in itself is our agreement with the superintendent on what would be monitored for these progress reports. I guess maybe I'm not sold on we have to relook at our indicators, but that's another discussion. Lisa.
Yeah, related to that. First of all, in the board summary for R2, that is on the agenda for tonight's board meeting, I did pull out 2 areas that had sort of come out of our previous discussion around R2. One was, because there's a couple different ways that I could see that we could slice and dice things. One strong interest that I heard in our previous discussion, which was before the extended study session discussion, but we were talking a lot about looking at students from low-income households as sort of a focus area, which could be sort of another slice, and then also looking at science, just digging into that a little bit more. So those are in the board summary for approval tonight, and of course we'll have the discussion if there's other things that people wanted to call out now that we've discussed a little bit more. Yeah, and just following up on the algebra data, because that's been like a point of anxiety for me for a little bit, because we know that a lot of work has happened, and so far it looks good, which is great, and knowing that R2 is going to lag so far behind this work. So what's super interesting about Inglewood, correct me if I'm wrong here, but they have been piloting, they were one of the pilot schools. So their current 8th graders are taking Algebra 1 with very few exceptions. So sort of the model that we're hoping the entire district will be on next year. Because R2 lags so much, that sort of data will get lost. You know, even in next year's monitoring report, because the 8th graders we're going to be looking at are going to be a mix of kids at schools like Inglewood, where they've sort of gone through this transition, and kids at schools that have not. And so it'll be sort of like we'll have a slightly clearer picture than we did this year, but it really won't be for 2 more years that we really get a good picture of, you know, what's going on here. And that's a really long time to wait. So being able to see some of this intermediate data that Dr. Holman shared with us, which is, you know, what did first semester grades look like from these students? It relieved a lot of my anxiety because it looked actually better than I was expecting. And so being able to sort of course correct as we go through versus, you know, come back in 2 years and be like, oops, we totally failed the class of 2030. Not that I feel like we're on that path, or I'd be raising many more red flags if I thought we were really on that path, but, you know, just, and also as sort of a process, that feels like a good direction to go in, and yes, there's no shortage of data points that we could potentially look at to enrich those pictures in very specific areas.
Lindsay.
Okay, please help me understand this. So in looking at R2, kind of what you're discussing right now, you're proposing that nothing would necessarily change as we see R2 as it is right now. However, the progress report, we would have to decide 1, 2, 3, 4, I don't know, like how many specific things to explore more in depth, because like I'm hearing low income household, science, algebra, like how many, I guess, indicators are we going to be exploring in the progress report, and those will be the same throughout the year. It's not like you're looking at one set in the first monitoring or the progress report and another in the next. It's continuous for the whole year. How many? Yes, thank you. You know where I'm going.
Yeah, I think that's the next discussion once we decide whether or not we want to go this route. So what the progress monitoring is going to look like, whether or not it would be kind of touch points throughout the year on the same focus area, or maybe like in October we talk about Algebra 1, and then in January we talk about low-income students in relation to all of R2. Or like that's a discussion that we as a board will have next and make a decision with Dr. Holman. Does that answer your question?
Kind of. Yes, it does. And I guess I was thinking, so we're saying yes to this without knowing that. Yes, correct?
Yes, we're trying to decide
Okay.
whether or not we
Reserving the right
want
to say no
to
later.
do this. And then we will, if we say yes, we are wanting to do progress monitoring or results and spending more time on results monitoring, then
But
our
that's
next
just-
conversation will be, what is that?
So it's not defined yet. Okay,
No.
that was what I felt I was missing. Like there was some defined.
We
and I
have
was like,
not
what did I-
defined it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Eric, did you have another? Or,
Yeah.
okay, Eric and then Mark.
Okay, I've been talking a lot. Mark can go first.
It's a real quick question. Director Guthrie brought up a point that, to me, it concerns me. If we've got Inglewood and maybe 1 or 2 other schools that were piloting this program in algebra, it would seem that their results would be far different from one that hadn't. when we report out that data, will we be separating the pilot schools versus the non-pilot schools, if you will? It just seems like that'd be a really good, it wouldn't water down it wouldn't bolster up the uninitiated, if you will, and it wouldn't water down those that have been working on it for a year or so. You see where I'm going? Does that make any sense at all, or?
Yeah, so currently, right now, we report out success in algebra by 8th grade. And so kind of year over year, where you see the difference is in the number of students participating. So the N of what's being reported out. I believe part of R2 also over the past few years has talked about the progression of implementing a new, I'll say, curriculum profile for 6th grade math, 7th grade math in preparation for 8th grade math, algebra in 8th grade. Jen, do you want to?
And with that, I think some of what we talked about before is OE 11 hit some of this, where we talk about some of the shifts in instruction. But what's currently in R2 is success in algebra by 8th grade, and then there's another big chunk in that same math that's the grades that 8th grade students get in their math class. So we're tracking multiple data points to see not just are they successful in algebra, but how overall successful are they. And to Dr. Holman's point, I think this year we had an additional 130, 150 students that took algebra, and we had a higher percentage of students with a C or above than we've ever had. So the number of kids taking algebra continues to go up, and the grades of students in algebra are tracking positively as well.
And if I can step on Eric for just a sec, I think that's part of the challenge of like policy is that this is a point in time problem. In 3 years, we're going to be through this transition phase, and then we will just be monitoring, and all of the numbers will make sense. I don't really want to change R2, like the indicators of R2 and policy to, for like a year or two to break out separately. And I see that as being the strength of this structure, is that if there is one of these point in time things where we do want to dig in a little bit more, we have the ability to do that without like going through a whole new policy adoption process. That's my personal view.
Yes, as long as, so the one of the reasons we monitor is it's the superintendent's evaluation. And so as long as there's agreement ahead of time that part of that evaluation is going to be, I'm being facetious here, but is like, for example, algebra success at Inglewood Middle School. Like that to me is like not a good use of time. If we're just happening to look at Inglewood as like a pilot, that's not really providing information back that would be used for monitoring R2. If we're going to this ahead of time, we're agreeing that a component of our R2 monitoring is going to be demonstrated, some level of demonstrated success with a pilot program, something like that. That's what, to me, like, it's really important that we have an understanding and an agreement as a board and with the superintendent before we go down this path. Because otherwise, if we just get one-offs, like, hey, look at this cool program at one middle school that's working well right now this year, I don't know how that's like helping me as a board member evaluate Dr. Holman, which is the biggest job we have. And so, yes, great. And provided that we are doing which I really do think it's going to be a lot of work to nail down what it is that we want out of these additional opportunities to monitor, and to have it be something that is meaningful to evaluate the system.
I think the only thing I would add is the evaluation is still ultimately based off of the final approval of each of these results reports, and the progress should be it's a subset of what's already in R2 or R1 or R3. It shouldn't be there are no different outcomes between whatever the in-depth progress monitoring report is and the high-level finding, if that makes sense. It's how do these pieces add up to that high level? And so if we're selecting the topics for progress report monitoring correctly, then those are one and the same thing. There would be no alternative point of evaluation based off of a progress report, because ultimately it should speak to what the high level report says.
And the example of, like, if we're going to spend a meeting going through the success of a particular middle school,
No.
like that, I know that's not what you meant. I know that's what you meant. So you don't have to say that. But I worry that is, like, I just worry about the sliding towards that with this. So that's why I keep harping on it.
Lisa.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good question of, let's say that actually the Inglewood results were terrible. Would we factor that into Dr. Holman's evaluation? And I will give my personal answer, which is no. I think we would do our monitoring of R2 like we do today, and you know, approve or not based on that data, the indicators, the interpretation and indicators that we've agreed on. And then this progress reporting I see as being able to dig in further, but that not being part of the evaluation. I think that's actually a really important clarification. Now, if the Inglewood results are terrible, and nothing happens, then that will eventually show up in R2, because to President Choi's point, these are not random things that, like, the reason we're talking about Inglewood is because that's part of a broader initiative that's eventually going to roll out to the whole district. So it's not just this isolated point. I know you knew that. But yeah, so that would eventually, if the results were not great and no course correction was made, that would show up in R2, and then that would be part of the evaluation. That's how I see it, but I'm open to different interpretations of what we're talking about here.
I would hope that's not how we're using the time personally. That we are, like, using the time to actually monitor, because that doesn't sound like monitoring results to me. That sounds like we're hearing it sounds closer to just like, here's a particular program that is being offered and here's how it's working or not working. That's not monitoring the results of the district as a whole. And so I mean, there are things we could spend on our time on that would be more troubling to me, but, like, I don't actually feel like that would be particularly high. I want to think about it more. Where I sit right now, I don't feel like that would be particularly high leverage use of time.
Anyone else?
I'll just state my disagreement, that I do think it's high leverage as long as it's done thoughtfully. It needs to be done thoughtfully, but I do think that can be high leverage. It's very challenging to know what altitude always to operate at here, and, like, where I'm being helpful and where I'm just getting way down in the weeds and not being helpful as a board member. So I definitely respect that. I think that this could be far more high leverage than right now. Like, honestly, R2 feels like we kind of swoop in once in February and we're like, cool, like, you're teaching kids stuff or not, and then we come back the next February. And I think that there's, I don't want to be down, like, at the classroom level directing things or, you know, so on, but I do think there's, like, another level down that we need to go to really be effective in directing the organization, is my personal opinion.
Eric, your name tag is still up. Do you have more to say?
No, I think only that I'm like, comfortable, like, moving forward with this. I appreciate the discussion from everyone. Reserving all rights to later. Otherwise.
All right. Does anybody else have anything else? So what I'm hearing is there is interest in moving forward with planning a work plan for next year using this as a model. And we will go ahead and plan for a more detailed draft with proposals from Dr. Holman and staff on what the progress report monitorings will be. Yes? Okay. We can now move on to our second topic of the evening, which is our student board representatives' reflections and highlights. Leading our discussion is going to be Director Yoakum and Director LaLiberty. Take it away.
And I had all my notes ready to go, but now I can't look at them because I'm displaying my screen. Director LaLiberty and I have had the opportunity to oversee the 4 student board reps this year, and this is the day where we give them the opportunity to provide feedback. I will say we have learned
The one day during their term that they can provide.
the one day, thank you, where we will just be listening and hearing about your experiences and taking what you say and trying to improve this program for future student board representatives. I just want to say thank you to the 4 of you. I did put together some pictures. They're very minimal pictures. I apparently don't take many when I'm around you guys. But but we've had an opportunity to get to know you guys, whether it's through bowling or yeah, they did the student the Spirit Day. Yeah, so we've had an opportunity to get to know you guys and really appreciate the insight and the questions that you bring to our meetings. So we can just stay on this for a little bit longer, make sure everyone takes a peek at those pictures. So we ended up putting together a form and having students submit their feedback prior to today. But some of those open-ended questions, I kind of want to highlight some of their responses, and then also just give them an opportunity to share. Went in and looked at our expectations for the student board reps, and they kind of fit into 2 different categories. The first category really being that of, student reps are here to provide student voice for both directors and administration. So 2 of the specific expectations were collecting information from students and then finding a way to disseminate that information back to the students. I'm trying to look, sorry. Okay, so the first question I asked was, what can the board do to help representatives effectively gather input from students across all schools? Because we do have them in East and West regions, and the expectation, right, is that they are working with and informing and gathering input from students in all of those schools. Here was some great information you can read. I'm wondering if anyone wants to elaborate on their responses or provide any additional feedback of kind of what the board can do to help. And I will come in and say that this is what, year 3? Is this year 3? This is year 3. So this is, I feel that I am learning a lot of what the board can do to better support students to be able to do these jobs. I would say I wouldn't think that you were successful in this, not because of you, but because of the lack of support that you have, that we have been giving you, that we have not been giving you, I should say. So I would like to hear, this is an opportunity for us to just kind of hear more from you guys about specifically this right now.
This year, well, there's some backstory to this. This year, the LWSD AP exam policy has changed since last year, and that that really matters to me because I do robotics. And our worlds this year, our world like championship competition exactly aligns with AP testing. So you either have to pick one or the other. You can't go to both. And I did work with Director Arnon in the district to like get student voices in this policy through like forums and a survey. But I think that effort of mine was also largely contributed because it mattered to me, since I would be directly affected in my community, like robotics, people that that mattered to me, like this community. It was directly affected by board policy. And in this situation, I don't necessarily see how me as a student rep on the board really influenced my decision to try and get student voices. I think if I was just a regular student in the district, I could have easily emailed Dr. Holman bringing this up, or contacted Director Arnon. So I think that effort of mine to gather student input was one, like very small, on a small scale. It wasn't really like broad, and it didn't really contribute to what the board had to do. But I think what this situation kind of brought to me was, if a student wants to make change, I don't see how there's a difference between if they were a rep trying to make change and just a normal student trying to gather input. So I think specifically for the board to help us gather input to help these decisions, I mean, like through the feedback, I think this would be really useful. But I think there has to be a distinction and like, not an advantage, but I think some sort of way where we as student reps have more of an impact than just like a regular student who wants to voice their opinion.
Okay, so, yeah, I was gonna say, take a look, try and figure out which one was yours. Maybe that will spark ideas. James, thank you. That was, I don't think that was included in your, maybe that was, but I appreciate that.
I think that worked with what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay. I think a big distinction that I learned this year that I didn't know like last year and the year before that as a LWSD student is that the board doesn't directly influence like administrator operational policies. And like that's what I believe the board would do, like make policies like the AP exam testing policy, or I don't know, like PE getting waived or credits, right? But that is largely the administration and not the board. So I think as a board rep, I didn't collect student input to influence the board decision, but in that like AP exam rescheduling policy with like events that coincide with it, that was not really for the board but for the district. And I think that distinction kind of made it like if my job is for the board, right, but what I did was not for the board, I think that's why I didn't really include it in like this feedback form or just in general, since it didn't really have to align with the board's normal workflow.
Thank you. I was going to say, so then what input do you think would be, like, that you would maybe go and seek out that would benefit what the board does? Having a better understanding of what we do, do you have examples of, you know, what you would be asking or what topics? I'm curious.
Okay, I think what matters to most people are not board policies. What matters to people are the school district administrative policies. That's what most students, honestly, all the community members really just care about. How does these administrative decisions affect them? But I think above that are the board policies that affect the administrative policies. And I think that's a distinction that a lot of people don't understand, because they come to board meetings with a lot of administrative issues, and sort of expect the board to act on it. Like, for example, today's like long list of public speakers. It's mainly about the Juanita High School like electives course policy. I don't really know the specifics about it, but I look forward to hearing the input.
I have thoughts, but I don't want to share.
So I don't really know how to get feedback for the board and what they do, since most people really only care about the administrative policy, like 30 minutes later start time, or I don't say 6 days, right? People care about that.
So there's one example that comes to mind from this past year where I felt like our students were particularly engaged, and that was when we were talking about the learning environment and rewriting OE 10. You guys all kind of came with thoughts and had spoken with friend groups, and if you reflect on that experience, because that's board policy work and directly we're asking for input from the student body, could I ask you to reflect on kind of that experience and what you think would have made it, what you liked about it, what you didn't like about it, what would have made it better potentially? Yeah.
I guess for me, I think my answer kind of centered around the idea of like, you can't really comment on something without knowing what you're commenting on. And I think that when we're trying to gather input from students, like, and the reason why OE 10 was so like, we were able to respond to it is because it's directly applicable to us. But when it comes to OE's like facilities or technology, like, yes, like, okay, maybe I can comment on one thing, but it isn't directly applicable to me. So when we're trying to gather input from students, it's the same thing. And the reason why we hear so many administrative concerns or people are flagging certain things is because it directly affects them. I think that in order to comment on something, you need to know what you're commenting on, and that starts with making sure that we are distributing information before we can collect it. Like, I can't go around and ask my friends, oh, what do you think about OE 13, without them knowing what OE 13 is, right? So I think there's a step before even gathering input, and that's making sure that they know what they're inputting on. And that starts with some sort of platform or method of like information distribution that will explain certain things and why certain decisions are made. And going back to OE 10, I think because we know exactly what learning environment means, we were able to comment on it.
So would it be helpful if the board were to find ways where you could provide information about what it is we even do before even gathering that input? And maybe on specific topics, or like if there are a few, you know, like we're talking about OE 10, like if it just dives into that at the beginning of the year, and that is the information that you're sharing with students. Okay, go. Sorry.
I mean, it could be literally on anything. I think that any way to tell students what we're talking about is better than not telling them at all, right? So if we look at Mercer Island School District, like their entire student rep has like, they have an Instagram account, and they may not talk about like topics that students talk about on the day-to-day. Like they talk about their bonds and they explain why it's important, but at least having that sort of forum to explain to students, oh, this is what we're talking about, and yeah, it might not affect you directly right now, but like it affects other people. I think that's still important.
That's good.
It could even be like meeting recaps or TikToks or I don't know.
In my opinion, I would argue you could find maybe 10 people maximum in Lake Washington High School who knows what board docs is. So I like maybe
less
5.
than that.
Maybe 5. Maybe just 2. Maybe me and Cheryl.
And maybe they know what board docs is, but they don't know how to use it.
I don't think I've ever heard OE results, board docs in any conversation in my whole high school ever at school. I think she was right with you need to spread information before you gather it, and there needs to be some sort of clear and very easy to like access way for people to get informed, because right now, well, I mean, you could argue that's public, it's on the internet, anybody can search it up, but really board docs is kind of hard to use, to say lightly, and it's not it's oh, it's going away. Oh, yes.
A new thing to learn.
There needs to be some way for people who, even if they don't care about this, to be able to access information, and I think Instagram, social media is a great way to do that.
Can I just ask, so let's say there's like Washington School Board Rep Instagram account. What are you putting on there? Like what does that look like?
I think it's largely just me mirroring Mercer Island.
Just give me a sec.
Okay, I'm giving you a
Talking.
second. You want okay? Mirroring Mercer Island. I mean, I haven't. She's trying to find it right now, but it's largely just giving information like bonds or other policy updates, and okay.
With 274 followers, the Mercer Island student school board representatives have their own Instagram. Oh, did you just follow it? 275. And they just like have information that like we could maybe send out in, what are they called? Like the newsletters? What are they called?
The Student Square.
Yeah, Student Square. Like, it's just a more accessible way to earn this learn this information. So, for example, they posted the information session about their bond on April 3rd, or they talked about their bond proposal, or why you should fill out these certain surveys and what they're used for, or town halls. I think that information should be available within one click and like right now, board docs takes me 5 clicks with knowing where it is too. So if I didn't know where it was, it's going to take me more than 5 clicks. But Instagram is 1 click. Thank you. And we can turn off comments if we're worried about like bullying or something. But I think it's like an accessible way that people will see. Why?
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move on really quickly here. Okay, kind of the same, I guess. It is helping you report back to this. I think is exactly what we just said right here. How do you give information? That's a little bit more of what we were talking about, what you're sharing with Instagram. That's more of the way of sharing information rather than collecting it, especially if comments are turned off. But I appreciate some of the feedback you guys provided. If there's anything else, we can, I'll just let you guys talk if there's anything else or comments.
Do you all get the summary email for each board meeting? So there's a summary created of each board meeting that outlines what was done at the study session, the board meeting, with links and things like that. Do you receive that already?
To the student email? Or to the
Any email?
You have to sign up.
You don't. Okay. Because that's another thing we could just automatically do is populate that, because as you're thinking about like a monthly newsletter, what that summarizes each meeting with decisions that were made and things like that, which could also kind of provide you with an easy way to have that information too.
I think that's a great resource, but the fact that like we don't already know about it like shows that it's like not accessible, right? So like we can have the resource and like that's great, but if no one knows about it, then what's the point of having it, right? So I think that yes, that's an important resource, but if no one knows, like how do I even sign up for that?
Yes, Shannon does know.
There's actually a link for it on the board members website. I believe if there's not, I will go make sure it's there. But it's just a sign up in Parent Square, and we have hundreds of people that currently get those. They not only get the board summary, but they also get an update every Friday before a board meeting with links to the agenda, so that people can get a direct link to board docs into the agenda and take a look at what we're going to be discussing at board meetings. So I will make sure all the student board reps are added and all the board members are added, because I thought that had already happened. So I'll make sure that's in there.
Do we know how many students are signed up for that newsletter?
I was told to speak on school visits. I've been a strong supporter of school visits for a while, just because I can also get out of school. But I think they're truly beneficial, because like it might have I don't know why you guys go on them, to be completely honest, but for us, I don't know what's so funny. I think they would be really fun, because or not, but I think that establishing certain connections with not only administration at these schools, but also teachers, would allow us to more easily collect information about even our youngest students. Because yes, a lot of the times we speak directly on high schoolers, and that's just very easily accessible. Like, I can just text my friend right now and ask. But like, when I'm talking to like middle schoolers, like having an established connection and making sure that they know who we are is, I think, an important step in gathering feedback. And I just think a school visit would be really fun, because I don't think I could name all the schools that I represent, and I would wonder if anyone could. But
as I was reading a lot of their feedback, I was really just trying to think of how all of their suggestions are really, I don't know, like that one in particular, to help them to contribute during meetings, to be able to know, like, if we're specifically speaking about something that is happening at like an elementary level, to be able to have an understanding of it. I think just seeing that this role that I have right now is really to try and help prepare you the best that I can, so you can participate and feel confident and comfortable. And I think part of that is making sure that you do know what's going on throughout all of the schools, to the level we do.
I have a question about, I believe that the Thursday communication I have with the board is uploaded to SharePoint for all of you. Is that something you find helpful and useful? And it's okay if you say no. Because when I hear like the comments about the school visits, there's a relatively lengthy write-up about every school visit that we do that you're not there, but it could provide some insight to then even have a conversation around, would it be worth going to a middle school, another high school, an elementary school, or our preschool, to understand really the instructional program and those components that are occurring, such that missing class would be worth it. Because I'd want you to evaluate that, because I know you don't want to miss class, and so making that decision is a big deal. And so, but no, my question really is the information that's provided, is it useful, or is it just kind of another thing on top of all of the other links to information that you have? So it becomes more overwhelming than it is helpful. And is there another way to get you the information that would be more helpful? Maybe that's another way to ask it.
In my opinion, I think all the information that we get from like Lindsay sends out, Director Yoakum sends out weekly emails to us before the board meetings to help us prepare for the conversations. And if I'm going to be honest, I did not use SharePoint as much as I should have this year. Like, I think it was a resource that was always there for me that I sometimes used, but that should have been used more, since I think there's a variety of information on there that could have helped us in gaining the information, like you said. So I don't think it's like necessarily a bad thing. I think more information is always good, unless you get to the point where it's like overwhelming amounts. But I think SharePoint and those board briefs are good things overall.
Yeah, I agree. Usually when I get like the email on my phone, like it's always like 5 or 6 emails or maybe 10 in a row, just upload, and then I immediately just scroll them and I clear all of it. And so I always ignore what's in the SharePoint, but that's probably because like I feel like it's not required for me to read it or to know what is going on in the SharePoint. Because if something's not required for me to do, then I will usually not do it. I've been hardwired like that from school, so like I think that it's like totally fine for you guys to like assign more readings for us, because we all stepped into this position having an expectation that we would have a considerable amount of workload to do. And so I don't think it's wrong to maybe just suggest like, hey, we recommend you guys reading about this, because if you say that, then we will probably at least glance at it. So yeah. OE10. Yeah.
OE10. Oh, sorry. Only doing what you're assigned to do.
So if all those uploads came in an email from me saying, please read, you would do it? Yes. Okay.
There's also a lot of buttons to click for the SharePoint, because it only ever opens on my laptop because it's like connected to my SBR account, and like there is no password for that account, so like I don't even know how to work it sometimes.
Okay,
I
so
don't know.
it's finding a process that works, that will motivate you to prepare. Oh, on that note, can we go on, or is there more? Okay, because the next piece is more along the lines of representing students. It's the meetings and coming prepared and understanding of policy. So this might be part of it. Is the expectation is reviewing meeting materials prior, so you can participate in what can we do to better support your preparation for meetings. I think I just heard one.
Okay, I'll just speak on the one that I said. I said learning the ways that board members prepare for the meetings would help students find the best ways to prepare for themselves, because like we're kind of thrown into a position and we're expected to ask questions, but if we don't know what type of questions to ask, it will be hard. And anyone can say, oh, any question's a good question, but it's still kind of scary to ask certain questions. So I think just like I know that like Director Yoakum takes like a lot of notes before meetings. I don't know what Director LaLiberty does or Director Joy does. No, that was just like, it was like, I was going to go through all of them. It wasn't just, or Director Guthrie does or like Director Stewart does, but like it would be helpful to like know what other people do to like learn how I can do it myself. You know, it's like I always say this just like the I do, we do, you do. Like, let me see how you do it, and then like we'll do it together, and then like you can do it by yourself. But I'm sorry, I didn't mean for that to be mean. How do you prepare?
When do you think that is best shared?
Onboarding. And you might say, no, that's so overwhelming, but like, I feel like we kind of signed ourselves up to be overwhelmed.
I actually think almost like a few quarters in, like in advance of a meeting would probably be the best time. I don't think it's part of an initial onboarding. It just feels like it'd probably be like a fire. I don't know that the context would be right where there would be, where it would be helpful learning, is my sense.
Sharon disagrees.
That's fine.
Well, then how am I supposed to prepare for the first meeting if I don't know how to prepare? Coffee chat?
I don't know what those words mean.
So what if I were to sit down with the 4 student reps? And I kind of look at it like with teaching, like you said, I do, we do, you do. And it is really me talking through what it is that what I do at least. And I can sit down with the others and gather like, this is what they do if you want to do separate meetings. But I think they would probably appreciate if I talk to them and then share that information. I don't know. Yeah. So
That is a coffee chat.
Oh, okay. I did not. Okay, we discussed over coffee.
Yeah.
Got it. That makes
The name.
sense. But I think over time, I think if this is established, I think that having, like James and Suniri being able to do that with the student reps, the new student reps for next year. So I feel like if I'm doing this next year, James, like in September, it would be kind of modeling what potentially those student reps, those juniors would be doing the next year. That's kind of my thought.
It's also like, what do you want us to prepare for the meetings? So, I mean, like, obviously, our role is to bring student voice to meetings, but in that sense, it's really vague, right? Are we the student voice, or are we, like, gathering input like before? So it's also defining what preparation means, in my opinion.
This is more about like during the meetings, and I think it's kind of the same, right? These are probably all very similar, but
Sorry, Director
oh.
Yoakum, can we go back to prepare for a second? I did have one question for the students. I can appreciate that it's easier to open an email from Director Yoakum that kind of lays out everything that you guys need for preparation for the next board meeting. What happens when Director Yoakum is no longer supporting student reps?
Independence.
But how would you suggest we foster independence in our student representatives so that their success is not contingent on a specific board member?
I think what Shira brought up earlier was valid, like another onboarding session, or just some sort of, when you're a sophomore, become a junior, or after you get accepted, I think it would have been helpful for me to have more preparation on how to prepare, like more training on the expectations, and just like more resources, since I think in a lot of ways it was all like shoved on us at once, and then we slowly learned how to really assimilate with all that information. And there should be, I think, a little bit more guidance in that beginning process to reach a point where, like, before each meeting, they'll do their own research, or they'll know where to go for these certain documents, or, like you said earlier, like the board briefs, or other resources that were given to us, like, pretty fast, and that I think I should have used better.
do you feel you could lead that for 2 new student board reps in September?
I think, well, Suniri's not here, but I think Suniri and I could, but I think in a lot of ways it would be helpful to see how other directors prepare. Like Shira said before, since I remember at WASDA, an important comment that I heard, I I forget, it was from another student rep or it was from another board director from another district, but they said that the student reps should be treated as board directors. And I don't necessarily disagree with how the board doesn't let us vote, because in that specific district, I believe they did have a casting vote in all decisions, but I think in that sense, what they're trying to communicate is that if the other directors prepare in this certain way, we should also prepare in the same way. If the other directors participate in the conversation in a certain way, we should model after how they do it, but bring the student aspect into that.
I think it'd be also nice because I believe that we're all capable enough to prepare on our own, but we obviously get more comfortable in our positions as time goes on. We are bonding with you guys and we know you guys and we laugh and we're familiar with the area, and so when we're comfortable we tend to maybe slack off a little bit. I know that we had that one instance where we okay guys, no, but there's that one instance where we started to go on our phones more, pay attention less, and then you guys had a tiny bit of a stern talking with us, and now I feel our behavior is straightened up again. So it doesn't even need to be sit down I'm speaking for everyone. Okay, we're a team. But I'm just saying if you remind us maybe once a semester that we expect you guys to be prepared in the meetings, even when Director Yoakum is not able to send out an email prepared with everything for you. We expect you guys to do this because that's what we chose you guys as representatives to do. Just a simple reminder like that, I think is enough to make sure that we don't get too comfortable, Yeah.
One of the challenges right now with providing direct access is board docs. And so in the new platform, we'll also look to see if there's a way to give you better direct access into materials. And so that's another way so that it isn't Director Yoakum spending, I'm going to guess, quite a bit of time putting something together, which right now you also don't have access to it. And so there has to be a download and a send and all of that. And so, but in the new platform, hopefully there's a way to give better access as well so that you can get to that independence and so the expectation can be set. So there's also that technical barrier that we're navigating right now too.
I think that would be great, and I'm excited to look at it in the future when I come back to give public comment as a community member. I also think that it's just the way that the program is formatted that there needs to be some hand-holding in the beginning, regardless. It is a 2-year term, but at least for me, I feel I spent my first year just learning. So and it's always going to be someone's first year. So I just think that as much as we do need to be independent, there is definitely going to be there will always be constant support.
I think that is true of every new board member, regardless, that first year, the learning curve around what it means to be a board member, learning the scope and scale of the district, learning all of us and our nuances. It's a lot. And so I can appreciate as a student rep coming on, it's that same learning curve, and I would say plus. So.
I think something helpful that I found in other organizations that I'm part of, but on a much smaller scale, not 30,000 kids, is for a lot of student-led things where positions are switched every single year, basically new president every year or new president every 2 years. Or for us, it would be board reps. What was really helpful that we started doing was implementing basically documentation of how to do these processes. So for example, it's back to robotics for me, but buying parts off of these certain suppliers has a process now, because every year when a new president is elected, they have no clue what they're doing at the beginning, and then they slowly get a little bit better and know how do I do this? How do I do that? And so by making these process documents that the old presidents made was really helpful in streamlining the learning curve. And it helped with knowing exactly what to do. And I think that would be helpful for the student reps as well.
I love that, and I'm already working on that. But also for whoever's overseeing student reps as well. I think knowing, because I've learned a lot. Like I might have emailed you late Sunday evening, like, oh, there's a meeting tomorrow, and here's. I did not spend a lot of time. I will say at the beginning of the year, it was a lot more time, and I think as the year has gone on, it has been a lot less. Like I didn't even put anything in there for today. So that's kind of the hope, but I agree with having documentation of the process and the expectations, and I appreciate that. This was just more engagement, but I think it's pretty much kind of all the same. It's something that Shira, you wrote that I want to just, can I read it? Just know that our opinions are valid and valued. I think making sure that we do a good job of showing that. We know that you will always have opinions and questions, but they won't always say them if they aren't comfortable. And Shira had put in her, she compared it to like a math class. Like there may not be people asking questions, but everyone in there has questions. And those that are comfortable and confident might be the ones raising their hand and speaking. So do you have suggestions on how? Like what would you, yeah.
Well, I think this is a hard question because I think it's easier to self-reflect than give recommendations for the board on how to help us not be as scared, or I feel like this is like a really tough question to answer, because I feel like, well, I guess my question is how are directors, like elected directors, encouraged to participate in study sessions and board meetings?
Because they'll get voted off.
It's scary. Yeah, knowing that there's a camera on and there's a microphone and I can hear myself. Yeah, it is intimidating and it's scary, and that imposter syndrome, I think I said, is there all the time. And so I know for me, and I think something that you said, it's just once you become comfortable, as you become comfortable and the people in the room, and I feel like I'm probably speaking now more than I did a year ago because I also am more comfortable. So I don't know if it's just providing opportunities for the students to get to know each other and opportunities for all of us to get to know each other alongside you.
And I guess based on the last comment, how do you know that your opinions are valid and valued as directors? And it's not just for Director Yoakum, but for the directors too. Yeah, like, is there a way that you know that your opinions are valued?
I think a big validation for us is when there's follow-up. So if there's a question or a comment or a request and there's follow-up, then it's validating, right? That people are listening when you're talking. I'd hope.
I'd suggest that regardless of what they're looking for validation on your comments, don't feel like you need to have that validation. If there's something you need to comment on, you comment. If there's a question you have, you ask it. And regardless of whether the rest of the group gives a hoot, it hasn't stopped me. So my point is, you ask a question that you think needs to be answered, or you ask a question that you think someone else from the audience would ask, or one of your fellow students would ask, something that would help them. Either whether it's a question, whether it's a statement, or whatever. Don't wait for that validation. You're validated by virtue of the fact you were selected when you get down to it. That means a lot. Otherwise, we just pick somebody at random with a dartboard, and that didn't happen. So keeping that in mind, validation is great, but you're not always going to get it, and sometimes you don't really want it. You want to be able to say what you need to say to make a point.
I appreciate James's feedback there, because I actually think it's just like an important thing to flag, because it's that's like our job to like create the context and the environment and the relationships for people who come new to this board, whether it's students or board members, where like you can feel sort of like internally that like I am comfortable making this and like, but like for me, at least as a board member, when I started, like the environment in which you enter does matter. And so I think we just need to, I appreciate that feedback, because I do think that's something like we need to be, as a board and as staff, need to be thinking about each time we bring somebody on.
Move on quickly to the just board policies. This was one, kind of throw out some questions of would a lesson on board policy be helpful for new representatives? And some were like, yes. And then some said, no, I just kind of learn as we do it, right? Being present helped me learn about board policy more than any lesson. This was just interesting. It sounds like there's some feedback about just a better understanding of how these meetings actually work. And I don't know if that's in addition to kind of what we go over in onboarding, but if there's any, I guess this would kind of maybe be where I ask questions about like onboarding. Like it sounds like it would be beneficial to meet to see how board members prepare prior to a meeting. What else would be helpful prior to kind of those first meetings, thinking back to your junior year starting?
Well, this was closer in time for me than it was for Shira and Ella. So I think for me, yeah, I kind of learned about board policies and board workflow just from being present. But I think I think a lesson on board policy would be really helpful, especially for new reps. It might be kind of boring to read, but I think going back to like documentation of processes, like I said earlier, and like I think Director Yoakum is working on, would be helpful too. And I think explicitly saying the purpose and of the study sessions and the board meetings, the work that is done in those, what are progress reports, what are superintendent evaluations, what are all these things would be really helpful, instead of just being there and be like, oh, that's what this is or that's what that is. I think learning explicitly would be helpful.
Yeah, I agree with James. What would be helpful for me is just understanding just understanding the context of why we have a topic for a study session. When we analyze elementary school data, sort of knowing beforehand when did we last talk about elementary schools, or what has happened since we last talked about this, to the point where this needs to be a topic in a study session or a board meeting. And I think that could be something as simple as us coming in 30 minutes before our study session starts and just talking with Director Yoakum or just anyone, being hey, can you readjust us to the context that we need to be in and the perspective for when we start the meeting.
I think also learning what a board actually does, like its responsibilities. Because but before, when I was like really small, I thought it was it was related to the administrative policies. And I think that distinction that I learned from the beginning, that I think Director Yoakum told me, was that like administrative policies and board policies are not the same, and that the work of the board does not directly affect what most people would believe the board does, I feel like.
Did I get that right?
There's a nuance there, but
Can I ask a question about, because you brought up Mercer Island student board reps, and I'm wondering, either through WASDA, the WASDA conference, or any other ways, the town hall and meeting with other student board reps, do you engage with them to the point of to learning some of the things that they do other than Instagram? That would be beneficial, or would that be advantageous to try and build relationships with at least local or throughout the state? Just thoughts on engaging more with other student board reps, because I know I engage with other board directors, so would it be helpful at that level?
I think specifically for this question, understanding board policies, no. But I think overall, for our position, for our responsibilities, yes, I think it would be helpful.
Yeah, sorry, I asked that and that had nothing to do with policies. Sorry.
am I recalling correctly that one of the things our board reps were going to do is the monthly WASDA student rep meetings? Is that something that you all have done?
I've gone when I can, but they normally fall on Monday nights, which is like I have activities on
Monday
them.
nights? Gotcha.
So I go when I can, but I don't go every month.
So when you go, are those helpful?
I think certain people are more outspoken than others, but like they're just, I don't know. I mean, I'm like pretty close with the Mercer Island like rep, and I think that's just how I interact with people outside. It's just like we talk about things that are going on in our districts and the differences, but also the similarities. So.
Do you talk about just like what's happening in schools, or do you talk about more of like, how do you operate as a student board rep?
Well, recently it's been the first one, just like with our bell schedule and like their own issues, and then it like leads into other things, just like how they have like unlimited public comment and stuff like that.
I'm putting this up here because there was the last question I had was anything else, and then I forgot to write a question and I left it as a question. But it was lovely because all three of them, I just have to point this out, responded so differently. Shira gave like a detailed, like, this is a thought that I'm having. And then James asked specific questions because it said question, right? Like that's what you're supposed to do. And I will go back to these, but I do just really want to say that Ella did write this along with a description of what her favorite cookie was. So I did bring her favorite cookies this evening. But we will go back here to address. Do you want to answer these?
I can answer the first one.
Yeah, we want to answer
We
James's question.
received, 82,
Yeah.
I think 82 applications for the two positions for next year, 30 from the west side of the district and 52 from the east side of the district. We've started reviewing them. Some have done more review than others. Lindsay and I are reviewing them. And we'll identify students for an interview soon-ish, and then have those interviews in May-ish. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, it continues. Each year, I haven't gone back and looked at the numbers. This, to me, I believe is higher than last year, and then last year was higher than the year before. And so eventually, we're having to change our process for reviewing it because it's becoming sort of unsustainable for reviewing and selecting. So we'll have to keep thinking about that. But it's also great. It shows that there's growing interest, right?
No.
Any follow-up questions on that? I don't know who asked that specific question.
I asked all 3 of the questions.
Oh, you did. Good for you.
You follow the instructions.
Does the board have any thoughts, suggestions for next year? I'm not going to respond to that. Probably. Yes, for sure. Yes, to answer your question, yes, the board does. How can we currently be more proactive in supporting the board's efforts to encourage student representation? Is that a good question?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. It was a good question, though. I mean, it's a great question for continue to think about, but I don't know the answer. Why'd you make me answer those?
Sorry.
Okay.
Can I ask Ella and Shira, just because you are the 2 that will be leaving, just in the 2 years here, kind of what are your big takeaways or learnings from this experience, or things that you enjoyed, or yeah, I'm just kind of curious.
I think one of the nice things that I've learned that was sort of unexpected is like being so confused but still being able to piece together things well enough, and like you like don't know what's happening, but then as like time goes on and as like meetings go on, you piece together information and you start like painting a picture for yourself, and like being able to reorient yourself independently without having to have like any hand holding is like, I think, a difficult skill or thing to maybe go through, but I think it's definitely very helpful in the long run because you're always going to be infinitely confused for whatever you're doing. And it's been nice that this is a nice opportunity for me to do that and practice that. So that's something that I did not expect, but I'm glad to have gone through that period of confusion. Yeah.
I think for me, what I learned is that, like, even if something I say doesn't have any impact, like I'm impacting someone by saying something. So, like, for example, like the last meeting, like, yeah, it can't change, but like all my teachers still came up to me like the next day thanking me for like speaking out. So I think that's what I learned.
I have a thought actually on the second, if I may. Do we have a few minutes? So like a lot of the feedback tonight was like students wanting to know like how can we know, particularly early on, like how can we know when to interject ourselves and how to do that? And so like I'm thinking about like the onboarding, and we're going to be doing that in June, which is pretty close to when we're going to be adopting the work plan for next year. And so I think pre-identifying for the student reps as part of that. Like these are like some particular like high leverage points of like where like student voice will really matter in the work of the board, and like providing that framework ahead of time I think would be helpful for the new student reps to sort of be able to identify where. I don't know, maybe tell me I'd be curious if the 3 of you have any thoughts on that. Like knowing at the start of the year, here are some particular items that the board is working on, and here's how student voice could be influence, play a role in that. And just knowing that, I think far in advance, I think could be helpful. And I think we also just need to be more intentional about providing direction in the onboarding about at the meetings themselves. Like what does effective student voice actually look like when we're monitoring? I don't know the answer to that, but I think like we should think about that.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
I was going to say.
Good question, James.
That I think there's providing student voice, right? There's this, how are you representing the students that are part of your region? But then I also think what I learn a lot is just in your questions that you ask, like if it's around the data and you're looking at it and something doesn't make sense, or, you know, it's in that. And so I think there are pieces where we can pull in, like, yes, these are the topics where we'll maybe want you specifically with these questions to go out and gather this input to bring back. But then I also think it is showing you those monitoring reports and what to look at. And I think the questions you have and the way you examine that, that I feel that you all bring a lot of great questions around that. And it's not necessarily what students are thinking, but it's just your way of thinking and providing that. So I think they're both separate.
I think I don't know if I put it on the form, but like involving students on committees, I think I've said that before. Because if we are like publishing the work plan, I don't know how committees are even created, but like allowing student reps to be part of them. Cause I mean, I just searched it up to be completely frank, but like there's a difference between influencing something and impacting something. And like what I say will maybe influence how you think of it, but like impact is like the direct result of my influence. So I think allowing student representatives the more opportunities to impact policies and instead of just influencing them. Does that make sense? Okay.
What's realistic in terms of a time commitment for all of you, and where does the current level of board work fall?
I think I expected more work, like when I signed up for the position. Like I knew that, like I thought I was going to be like knee deep in board policy, but like for me currently it's like I know once a month I'll be here. That will take up a lot of time on that certain Monday, but then it maybe takes up like 2 hours the night before, and like that's all for the month. But I feel like as student reps, like we came in with the expectation that we would be doing more, so doing less is like easier. Like it's like not a problem, and I feel like we're like here when I expected us to be like here in terms of like work.
Yeah, I agree. It's like no work and then 3 hours of work and then you have to like obviously the actual board meeting and then another span of no work and then the cycle repeats. I think that's just like the nature of board meetings since they're like only bi-weekly and since we're only a half of them. But I agree. I wish I was on a committee because students, to be frank, don't really care about board policies. They care about the policies that affect them, and that's more of like the work of committees, in my opinion.
I think that's 3 years in a row that we've had students tell us they want to do more.
That'll change next year. Sorry. I was going to say thank you to the 4 of you. But if there's anything else that you want to comment on, or if there's any questions that anyone has. I did put it in alphabetical order. Yeah, not playing favorites.
Thank you so much for all 3 of you guys being here and for being candid and frank with us. We really do appreciate it. Since there are no other agenda items for the study session, the April 7th, 2025 study session is now adjourned at 6:34. Thank you, everyone.